Welcome to the Risk Report, a podcast with news and information on the world of big data. Today, my guest is from Revolution Analytics. We have Bill Jacobs. He's the Director of Product Marketing at the company. So, Bill, welcome to the show today.
Well, thanks, Rich. Glad to be here.
Hey, well, thanks for coming on, Bill. You know, it's been a while since we talked about Revolution. So, what I thought we'd do is go through your slides and then do a Q&A at the end.
Well, that sounds great. I'll try and make it brief so we have plenty of time for those questions because I'll bet there will be a few. Well, with that, let me introduce myself again. As Rich says, I'm Bill Jacobs, Director of Product Marketing with Revolution Analytics. Been doing this a little while. Was previously with 3 different companies that provide platforms in the big data space, and was recently offered the opportunity to join Revolution to work more on the analytics problems and to provide longer-term solutions for all the people that are trying to figure out, gee, now that I've got big data, what the heck do I do with it, and how do I make that a good choice for my business? So moving to slide number 2, I only have this in here to, in fact, chortle a little bit. Big data is a topic that people are, has been broadly adopted, but people are beginning to sort of pick it apart for overuse. And so the key point is not so much for us about big data, but about how do we use big data to achieve some kind of value, whether it's for the business or an agency or making a better Netflix or any of a number of possibilities. We engage lots and lots of customers here at Revolution, and we listen to what they tell us their problems look like. And slide 3 of the deck here gives some idea of what's going on out there. We believe that one of the most important challenges faced by anyone trying to build big data, big analytics, or BDBA as we call it, is the talent pool that's available. So much of what's talked about today is about big data, big analytics performed by data scientists, and these are some pretty expensive people. In a recent conversation with a well-known analyst from a well-known firm, he explained to me that a CIO had actually said to him that in all his career he had never paid so much blood money, and he used the term blood money, to describe the hiring troubles that he had getting people in the company and getting them to stay there. Another analytic project lead that I met at a very large household name retailer told me that about the best he can do when he gets a good data scientist on staff is keep them for about 2 years before someone poaches them away with offers of higher salary or whatever. Well, here at Revolution Analytics, as some of you may know, we're in the business of adopting and popularizing some platforms that utilize a language that was developed for statistics and analytics called R. And we believe that the key value of R is here on slide number 4. It basically makes available to organizations trying to do big data analytics somewhere upwards of 2 million R users in the world. That's a big number. As best we can put our finger on it, it's probably north of that number now, because what's happened is that almost all of the major statistics programs in the higher education world teach R as some portion of their curriculum. Now, looking at this a different way, how fast has R grown in providing a solution for the talent-based problem? There's a site that I like to read every so often called KD Nuggets, and the KD is Knowledge Discovery. Pretty popular site, pretty good coverage of what's happening in the high end of the business analytics, predictive analytics, and machine learning worlds. They do a survey every year, and their survey this year, done very recently, just a couple of weeks ago, showed results that R was in use in 61% of the respondents' shops where they're doing programming and statistics and using a language to do that. Surprisingly small was SQL. I suspect this is not because they're not using SQL, but because the data analysts are not using SQL. Python shows up very strongly, and this was probably the influence of Hadoop. Another view on this, they compared their 2013 results with 2012, and the highest growth were, of course, the Hadoop-based Pig and Hive languages, R and SQL, while all of the more traditional Linux, Unix languages, Perl and C++, kind of fell off a little bit. So we're seeing this massive growth in the adoption of R. One of the things, though, if you've not experienced R, and this is common, if you're an IT professional and you think in terms of Java, Python, Ruby on Rails, R is a little bit different. I like to think of it in the sort of vein of that JavaScript played to web designers. It was a simplified language that made results easier to achieve, that Visual Basic gave to business professionals, or that, going way back, that Fortran provided to scientists back when they needed a simple procedural language that they could indulge in without becoming deep space software developers. But R has grown well beyond that. The open source R is not only a language, but it is essentially the rallying point of a community. Now, we mentioned 2 million users. More importantly, R has active user groups in about every city in the United States, and provides more than just a language in that there is a repository of, last I looked, it was about 4,600 and something freely available algorithms. And these are algorithms built by our users, shared through this CRAN repository for free, oftentimes complete with test data and evaluation. So this is a great way to jumpstart an analytics project or jumpstart a career. So the question is, if that's available out in the open source world, what the heck does Revolution Analytics do? Well, we're the only provider who has taken the R language and used that within a more commercially oriented platform. And so we really take R, but then we enhance it by building a platform around it that gives it a lot greater performance, makes it easier to build R scripts and complex analytic flows using those scripts. And then we take that and make that available on some of the most popular and largest platforms available, which of course is critically important if you're going to take R out and turn it into its solution for users who are dabbling in the big data world. We're about 200 plus customers at this point. We're very busy. We have lots and lots of partners that are approaching large numbers of customers, so we're getting a lot of amplification of our value through those consulting partners and through our own efforts. If you have questions at some point and you want to engage Revolution, we can talk about a lot of these and tell you what they've done with it, how they've applied Revolution R Enterprise, which is our flagship product, and how they're using both our work in creating fast product and how they're using things from the R community like CRAN. So here we are. We're in the business of providing a high-performance scale. This is slide number 9, by the way, if you're following along. Revolution R Enterprise is our flagship product. It is, as best we can tell, the only commercially available analytics platform that also embraces the R language. The things that we have done take R and give it much higher performance and much greater scalability, which I'll tell you about, and then we make it portable across a lot of platforms and then easier to use and provide commercial support and all the other things that are needed to take a popular open source capability like R and make it a commercially viable solution. Going to slide number 10, I mentioned the talent pool problem earlier, but there are 4 or 5 others that we watch really carefully. And the first one I'll show you some solutions to, and that is if you're in the business of grappling with big data, you probably already know how many systems it broke for you, how many approaches no longer work, how many single server implementations simply ran out of gas. So many new platforms have emerged to solve big data, but there are remaining problems that we have to bring from our history around managing big data for things like governance and security and access controls and that sort of thing. The big uses of big data, though, lead immediately to complex computation, and this truly amplifies the problem set for IT, because things that you could compute on a single server in years gone by, you can't do today when you start doing things like complex, iterative, statistical algorithms that are also consuming big data, things like clustering algorithms and Bayesian statistics and linear and logistic regression modeling. Going further, some of the most interesting problems that big data companies are grappling with are those that go directly to their enterprise systems that have to be mission critical. And so there's a need to develop a capability of enterprise readiness and the ability to sustain these systems in a 4.5 nines kind of a reliability environment, because they're sitting in behind production systems like applications, like websites, like customer response systems, and all the things that actually run today's business. And then, of course, there's the efficiency problem. Big data analytics is not a static event. You don't achieve it one day by throwing a switch. If you build a model that predicts your customer's behavior, time will change their behavior. How do you detect that your model is, as we say, drifting? If you get model drift, how do you detect it? How do you find it? And how do you remodel and repredict behaviors so that you can stay at the optimum level of predictivity from what you're doing on big data? Aside all the capabilities of R, there are some limitations that have to be overcome, particularly in big data and enterprise support, and they're listed here. On the left, the open source R language that's available for free for download is memory bound in that it can only act on a single server and only on the physical RAM in that server. Well, as we all know, that simply isn't going to fly in big data. So Revolution Analytics has built a platform around R that enables it to grapple with large data on clustered systems. So that means that we're able to roll data in and out of memory from the disk on an as-needed basis and do that on clusters of machines so that we can accomplish not only computation on large amounts of data, but also using distributed systems like MPP clustered EDWs and soon Hadoop clusters. We took R, which was originally a single-threaded language interpreter. We not only accelerated its behavior, but we rebuilt it so that it's capable of scaling with the number of cores in a server or in a particular node and operates in a multi-threaded parallel processing way. And this vastly improves its performance. And finally, if you're building applications to run a business, you've got to have support. Community support is a wonderful thing for getting going. It is likely to fall short for most commercial organizations, and we provide a rich set of service and support tools to help you get going, to help you use the product, and figure out and debug problems when they come your way. How do we do that? If you look at the box I drew around some of these capabilities, the first things we did with open source R was we wanted to make R better and faster and more reliable. In order to do that, we added fast math libraries. They are called the MKL, or the math kernel libraries. They're a product of Intel. We bind this into our interpreter, and we get much greater performance just from that change alone. But we didn't stop there. We went on and added very significant memory management capabilities, the ability for the processors to run in multiple threads and distribute across those threads, and to operate in multiple cores, which is essentially an extension of multi-threaded execution. Moving to slide 13, the effect of this is pretty well seen in this chart where we're comparing the results of Revolution's R interpreter to the open source R interpreter, and you see the numbers on the right. The lowest number is a tripling of speed, and the highest is almost 20x. So, this is not something that's, we don't advertise this as a primary reason to go with Revolution R. It certainly is a faster product, but this illustrates the foundations that R provides for companies like us that can go ahead and build enterprise-class products with it. So this would be an observation that you could make on any Linux server or even a Windows laptop. But it doesn't stop there. The second thing that we did, which is actually probably the bigger and harder piece of what Revolution Enterprise brings to the R community, is that we then built an entire platform that can host our scripts, but do that in a highly parallelized, highly distributed, very portable environment. And so 4 things comprise that. We took the predominance of the big data-oriented algorithms that are available with R, and there's thousands of algorithms available, but there's only a small handful that are A, suitable for execution on big data, and B, widely used. In other words, under the curve, they are the fat part of the curve. Those algorithms have been recast and refactored within our product to provide highly parallelized versions that, for the guy writing the R script, it runs totally transparently. Instead of calling linmod for a linear regression, you call rxlinmod, which is our massively parallelized version of it. It runs exactly the same, except when it finds itself executing on a clustered or highly parallelized machine, such as a Linux cluster running LSF or a Windows HPC cluster, it will use all the machines and distribute the computation transparently to the R script. The script thinks it's running single-threaded, but the script runs massively parallel across those clustered machines. It also provides facilities for user code to be parallelized. There are things that some users want to do in parallel by themselves in R, and we make that very easy. But more importantly, we then took versions of that parallelism and created those such that they will run in database, in major analytical databases and EDWs, and in leading Hadoop Hadoop distributions. Now, those last two items are in beta now, and they'll be out later this year. We've announced them all, so you can check our website and kind of get the gory details of that. But the desired effect is shown here on slide 15, where we believe that our key value is that we bring all of the value of open source R, plus all of the 4,500 algorithms that you may want to use from that open source community, allow you to accelerate those and combine those with a rich set of very high performance, massively parallel algorithms that are designed for big data statistics and big data machine learning. And so the result is, without changing your skill set, and while taking in intellectual property you can get from the development community for free, from the open source community for free, we combine those to create a much higher degree of value for people building R-based big data analytics. It doesn't stop there. As we go into corporations, there are many populations, not just data scientists, that have a vested interest in the success of the company in using big data. They range from a basic end user, and the analytic end user on the left could be a worker responding to inquiries from customers on a telephone who wants to have next best offer presented to him or recommendations for courses of action. It could be a physician who is prescribing a drug and is receiving advisories back from his medical systems to say, you know, most physicians actually take the following course of action and get the following results. All the way to the far end of the scale on the right, of course, we have the data scientists and the information technology teams that are supporting them. And for the data scientists, of course, we believe that those are predominantly R programmers, and the IT teams are typically those that are standing up and maintaining Hadoop clusters and EDWs and the large clustered systems that are used to run big data analytics. And to that end, we provide not only high-quality development tools, but the ability within our platform to invoke scripts in R by calling things like RESTful web services from within tools like Tableau and Microsoft Excel and the like, giving many, many more users access to analytically derived data without having to become R programmers and dive into code and do the kinds of things that are done deep down in the development of these kinds of applications. And so that's pretty much where we are today. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing next. This is probably the key to Revolution Analytics value. Anybody can go out today and download open source R if they can make their problem fit in the memory of a single system. With Revolution R, we can scale those on to larger systems, and we can help you solve bigger and bigger problems with ease. But the greatest value of all is that we live in a very unstable world. It has several instabilities that are listed on this slide. For most of the people that we talk to, they have in mind 1 to 10 and sometimes 20 different use cases for big data analytics. But when we ask them, what will your use cases look like in 2 years? Very few have a great degree of certainty that the use cases today will be the use cases tomorrow. And what that means is that the platforms they choose today may not be the right platforms for tomorrow. And this adds huge risk to projects in big data analytics if the tools chosen also constitute a lock-in to a particular approach or a particular platform. And so as you think about your future, ask yourself these 4 questions. What are your use cases today, and how do you expect them to evolve? Here's a question. Let's say you're not using any kind of big data, whether it's machine monitoring or medical device data or image data or social media data. If you solved a problem one way today and then you had access to those new data sets, how would you solve that problem differently, and what would that change about what platform you'd want to put that on? In a recent report, the Winter Group depicted 2 use cases, and one he concluded very directly was well targeted to the Hadoop platform, but on an EDW, it wasn't as optimum. Another use case, and a very common use case, when he did the 5-year cost of ownership, it very clearly favored a massively parallel enterprise data warehouse, and Hadoop looked very expensive. So it's very difficult to predict for your applications today what you're going to need to run them on in a couple of years. And it's also important to ask the question, which vendors are going to win? Is Hadoop the end-all forever? I think not. Are Cloudera and Hortonworks and Pivotal going to battle it out? And if, yeah, of course they will. And the question is, who will win that battle? I don't think we know. And so what Revolution analytics provides is probably the final golden nugget, if you will, is something we call write once, deploy anywhere. And that is, philosophically, when we build our Revolution R platform, we make sure that that platform is 100% portable, and the code written is portable, whether you're running that on a laptop or you're running that on a large EDW or on a Hadoop cluster. The result is, if you decide you want to change platforms, it's very easy to do. The second result is, if you want to build your code on a low-cost environment such as a laptop or a small Linux server running virtual machines, you can do that. And your code needs one line of change to say, let's change our execution context to, and I'll just pull the covers off our next announcement right here, off of the Teradata EDW, or you want to run that database, run that application against files in HDFS on, say, a Hortonworks cluster. That can be done with a single line code change in your script and without disrupting the development of your applications. So that's basically Revolution R. We believe that R is probably one of the hottest solutions today for big data analytics. We make it scale. We build a platform that can deploy it across a broad variety of platforms. We give you commercial support and get started services and a big R community. And oh, by the way, you can WODA. You can write it once, deploy it anywhere you want to go. And we believe that this makes us the commercial solution of choice because we take the risk out of your big data analytics platform investments. And with that, that's the end of this presentation anyway. On this slide number 22 are a few ways you can contact us, phone numbers, web URLs, and a Twitter handle. Feel free to reach out any of those ways. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Rich.
Well, thanks for that, Bill. I was curious about the problem statement you started with, and that's this skills gap. And when you talk to your customers, do you see this as getting worse, or is it something that the educational institutions are stepping up and starting to churn out the right kind of grads?
Well, I think it's just starting to be fixed. I think that there are some legacy products in market where there are large user bases, but those same user bases are the ones that are being routinely poached. Once I began talking about big data, for example, in my LinkedIn profile, the number of recruiters that are proactively asking me to join their network because they want to offer me opportunities has gone way up, and I'm not even a card-carrying data scientist. If I could say that I was a PhD statistician, I'd get a lot more of those. So I think we're just on the beginning of utilizing R to solve that talent pool problem.
And then you guys base your code off of open source. Are you a big contributor to that community as well?
Yeah, largely we contribute back to that community in the form of fixes. We stay about 4 to 6 months off the leading edge of open source R, but we don't change open source R. We adopt it, we use it, and we contribute changes and fixes back. All of the stuff that really comprises the big data value of our platform is outside of the interpreter itself. It's algorithms we can call that are massively parallelized and written in C++, or graphical development tools that we built to make R easier to write. But we don't change open source R unless we fix it and contribute that back to the community. We believe that is a key pillar to being a good open source citizen.
Yeah. So one of your fortes, of course, is performance, and I noticed the word simulation. Being a person coming from the HPC space, are you seeing more traditional type of HPC people adopting R for their data science?
Yeah, increasingly. But what we see as much as anything is we see HPC people starting to tackle both HPC and HPA, or high performance analytic problems. A lot of what was HPC is an excellent skill base for grappling with the two of them together, for dealing with problems that are not only numerically intense, like Monte Carlo simulations of financial markets or weather forecasting, but the amount of data coming in to support those types of analytics is now big enough that that's become a big data problem as well as a high performance computing problem. So I think that, I think there's actually almost an interesting merger of HPA and HPC, and the kinds of places we see it are people interested in things like, can I use graphical processors, GPUs, to accelerate my analytics? And you can bet that way out in our future, we're watching that kind of stuff very carefully, and that serves, I think that totally blurs the line between HPC and HPA. I think they become less distinct over time.
Yeah. Well, great, Bill. Well, kind of a wrap-up question here. How easy is it to kick the tires on Revolution Analytics and move up from the open source and see if it's right for me?
Well, there's a couple of ways. The first question would be, are you wanting to kick the tires on R, or are you wanting to kick the tires on scalable big data capable versions of R? Certainly the R community is the best place to start to learn about R itself. And when you get ready to start learning about R in the massively parallel environments, we have evaluation methodologies for that, and we're happy to work with anybody that wants to take a look at those. We also have some academic capabilities to help people in the academic community take advantage of our product as well for educational and learning and early evaluation purposes. So there's lots and lots of ways to get into the R camp, and we'll help you with any of those we can.
Well, terrific. Well, Bill Jacobs, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show today.
That was great, Rich. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. Okay, folks, that's it for the Rich Report. Stay tuned for more news and information on the world of big data.